Welcome to Child Abuse Awareness with Darlene J. Clark.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Child Abuse Awareness with Darlene J. Clark. Be a part of the solution instead of part of the problem. Hope everyone's having a good day. Hey there, Bucket List. Good to see you. Thanks for coming in. Set your alarm so you don't miss the live stream. Love you too. Everybody come in and say hello. Please remember to hit the thumbs up. Hey, Jackie. Good to see you. Thanks for coming in, sister. Lots of love. Hey there, Bucket List. I'm glad you're back. Hello, everybody that's Facebook, and my son likes to call it the Book of Faces. How's the weather for everyone around? I know it's colder, probably colder up there in the north. Y'all get me laughing a lot of times. Appreciate y'all so much. In Matthew 18 or 6, but whoso shall offend one of these little ones which believe in me, it were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck. He would drown in the depths of the sea. I would say trigger warning just in case, because there's going to be a couple cases that we got list here too. Windy and cold. Hi there, Diane. Good to see you. Hope you stay warm. Get warmer. There's a lot of things we need to discuss, and there's quite a bit of stuff coming out about human trafficking and sex trafficking. Cold and raining in Edinburgh. Let's share the screen here. First of all, I want to show y'all how to go about to submit information for the 2026 Trafficking in Persons Report. I can let the link in the drop down in the menu here at YouTube. This guide shows the main section of the request for information for the 2026 Trafficking in Persons Report, TIP report, and provides detailed instructions for how to submit a response by the deadline of February 27, 2026. The U.S. Department of State relies on a wide array of sources, including the expertise of the anti-trafficking community, to better understand the trafficking situation on the ground. Submissions must include information relevant to national, state, local, or tribal governments, concrete actions related to human trafficking that have occurred since the start of this reporting period, April the 1st, 2025. You should have direct or other relevant experience related to the information in your submission or provide credible sources. Action and summary. This request for information seeks to gather information that is critical to ensure the TIP report includes the most comprehensive review of government concrete actions to combat trafficking in persons. The submissions we receive help provide additional perspectives on key areas. There's a date which the submissions must be received by February 27th, 2026 at 5 p.m. Eastern. Here's the addresses. Please send submissions and supporting documentation such as reports, survey data, or sources references to in the submission, by email to tipreport@state.gov for submissions related to foreign governments and TIP reports US at state.gov for submissions related to the US. Provide a point of contact for the submission in case follow-up is needed. The published TIP will not reference sources. Supplementary information scope of interest. Submissions must focus on governmental efforts, including details about federal, central, state, provincial, or local government efforts made during the reporting period, April 1st, 2025 to March 31st, 2026. Please note the tier rankings in the TIP report do not include an assessment of the work done in the particular country by non-governmental organizations, international organizations, or the private sector. Submissions may also include recommendations to address areas of governmental efforts that need improvement. Well, they said the deadline a little bit ago was in February this year, right? And right here they got the reporting period March 31st. There's two different dates there. Submission formats. Submissions can take any form such as data charts, completed survey questionnaires, published reports, and written responses. The inclusion of statistics or precise dates whenever possible is particularly helpful. Submissions do not need to address all questions in the request for information in order to be considered. Rather, they should focus on areas relevant to the submitter's expertise. Sources and citations. Information in the submission should be as specific as possible. So we go on and on. So a lot of people go and they love reading the TIP report, see if it's grown, see if it's knocked down any. So let's get over here to the. Watch out, I might start singing in a few minutes. Right here, it talks about DHS leads efforts to rescue child victims of sex and labor trafficking. Let me try to get this over here. You can see it bigger. Release date July 25th, 2025. This is at dhs.gov. The Trump administration has located 13,000 children who came across the border unaccompanied. Secretary Noam is leading efforts to rescue and stop the exploitation of the 300,000 unaccompanied children the Biden administration lost or placed with unvetted. Why did it do that? Come back there. Thank you. Many of the children who came across the border unaccompanied were allowed to be placed with sponsors who were actually smugglers and sex traffickers. Isn't that sad, y'all? The Trump administration has located 13,000 of these children. In March 2025, U.S. Department of Health and Human Services identified a backlog of more than 65,000 reports regarding children who came across the border. I'm sorry, I keep using my finger. It's a touch screen, so I think I better just use the mouse over here, right? In March 2025, let's start out all over. Of Health and Human Services identified a backlog of more than 65,000 reports regarding children who came across the border unaccompanied that were ignored during the Biden administration. Since discovering this HHS stood up a triage center and modernized outdated software systems to triage and action all reports. As of July 24th, 2025, more than 59,000 of the backlog reports have been analyzed and processed, resulting in more than 4,000 investigative leads, including fraud, human trafficking, and other criminal activity. I get a little anxious and I stutter a little bit. The evil of human trafficking cannot be overstated. It's modern day slavery. By leaving our borders open and even encouraging people to come here illegally, Biden enabled the largest human trafficking operation in modern history, said Secretary Kristi Noem. We have a once in a generation opportunity to eradicate human trafficking operations targeting the United States. Well, basically, the United States is one of the biggest hubs for human trafficking, for sex trafficking as well. We know that. Under the leadership of President Donald Trump and working together at every level of government, we can win this fight, and we will. I pray so, but I think it's going to be a never ending problem. Below are examples of DHS law enforcement's heroic actions for rescuing children. On June 16, 2025, during an HSI worksite enforcement operation targeting employers and subcontractors who knowingly hire illegal aliens, HSI Mobile identified and rescued a child and arrested 8 foreign nationals for violations of immigration law. The child was found to be working among adults and was believed to have never attended school since entering the United States 2 years ago. On May the 28th, 2025, HSI New York special agents arrested an adult male subject from Ecuador at his residence for violations relating to sexual exploitation of a child. New York received information related to a 15-year-old female who was apprehended near El Paso, Texas, after illegally entering the United States. At that time, she was pregnant with an adult male's child and had been in a relationship with him in Ecuador since the age of 13. The subject organized the smuggling of the young teenager across the U.S. border to engage in sexual acts. The subject's mother sponsored her after her illegal entry. The subject continued his relationship with the children, living together with his mother in Harlem. Disgusting. On May the 12th, 2025, HSI Austin reported the identification and rescue of a child. The arrest of 2 Guatemalan nationals for violation of immigration law, and the initiation of an HSI-led investigation of state and federal charges of human trafficking and statutory rape. During a welfare check, HSI agents, with the assistance of the FBI, identified a pregnant 14-year-old female residing with an unrelated adult male sponsor, later determined to be the biological father of the unborn child. On May the 1st, 2025, HSI Newark conducted a welfare check in East Orange, New Jersey. 3 minors, ages 17, 16, and 15, were encountered at the residence and were observed not to be attending school. During the check, it was determined the sponsor was not living with the minors. They were living in filthy conditions with active mouse infestations. The residence was void of food. An HSI forensic interview of the minors revealed alleged verbal, physical, and sexual abuse of the 3 minors, along with potential labor exploitation. On June the 24th, 2025, HSI Nashville, let's get that over there, reported the identification of 1 child victim and 1 adult victim of labor trafficking. During immigration court proceeding, the child victim disclosed that she and her 18-year-old brother had been forced by their sponsor to work to pay off their smuggling fees and to pay the sponsor's household expenses. We know there's been one in Tennessee. One girl ran off and left the restaurant, and she ended up running to the police department. So she ended up getting away safely. So let's close that one right there. Hey there, how you doing, Jonna? Hold on a minute. see what you're saying here. Does it say what they did with the children? No, it doesn't say what they did. Sad to say they got pregnant and had kids too. The little kids having kids. These people are evil, that's right. You're right, David. Hello, I'm glad that y'all are here. Appreciate y'all. It's all sick and twisted. Let's go here and show the next information here. This is where the Office of Intelligence and Analysis Unclassified allow recruitment of child sex trafficking becoming an endemic. Human traffickers increasingly use online extortion campaigns to coerce vulnerable children into commercial sex work. In 2025, reports of online enticement toward children rose to nearly 520,000, roughly 80% higher than the year before. According to data from the cyber tip line of the U.S. government supported nonprofit, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, wow, with 96% of the U.S. teens reportedly using the internet daily, traffickers exploit social media, video games, encrypted messaging apps, dating apps, and increasingly artificial intelligence to identify and manipulate victims. The NCMBC cyber tip line reported an over 60-fold increase in the use of generative AI in child sexual exploitation cases in 2025 compared to the year before. In September 2025, an individual in Indiana pled guilty to using social media and AI to extort 68 minors before sexually trafficking at least five of these victims. Y'all be careful about putting your children's pictures on the internet as well. Some of these sickos are actually taking the photo of your child, which is fully dressed, okay? And they have apps out there that would address your child and they'll be able to make porno out of your child's face, okay? Putting a makeshift body on them that, taking off the clothes and stuff. Sick and twisted what they're going to do about your kid. And that's exploiting your kid, okay? Even though your kid might not never been done that way, there's these sickos that's doing this to the pictures that you put on social media. So y'all, please be very careful. The following represents a typical life cycle of a sex trafficking operation targeting a minor through an online video game. First, identify the victim. Traffickers identify potential victims in multiplayer online games seeking to make initial contact with vulnerable children who appear to be isolated, seeking validation, or showing signs of family problems. And I want to thank my friend Carlene for showing me this information here. Meet in person. That's number two. Once the trafficker meets the victim, they will often transport them away from their support network and then force them to engage in commercial sex acts through force, fraud, or coercion. Okay, this must be number two over here. Then they establish a relationship. Aspiring traffickers build a friendship or romantic relationship with the victim and learn more about their pattern of life, establishing trust-based or shared interests. Then they go to encrypted messaging. The trafficker then suggests moving to private, often encrypted communication platforms that allows traffickers to speak with victims while avoiding monitoring by game moderators. Like Snapchat is one of the bad ones too. Victim isolation. That's the next one step. The trafficker attempts to isolate the victim and create a dependent relationship by driving a wedge between the victim and their families or support networks. Grooming sextortion. That's the next, number five. Traffickers then attempt to groom and manipulate the victim often requesting sexual content, which may lead to blackmail and increased control over the victim, also known as sextortion. There's a lot of kids that get caught up in this, and next thing you know, your child may have committed suicide because it was too much for them. Establish control. As control is established, the trafficker will persuade the victim to meet in person using a combination of promises and threats. I'll kill your dog. I'll do something to your family, okay? The next is meet in person. Once a trafficker meets a victim, they will often transport them away from their support network and often force them to engage in commercial sex acts through force, fraud, or coercion. So that is the spiral where this goes through. And I want to thank the Office of Intelligence and Analysis for this. See what this next one is. Okay. Hey there, good to see you, Peggy. I'm glad you're here. That what happened to the children and how they were helped is crucial. I agree 100%, 110% there. So get back on this level. StreamYard needs to change it where it don't keep changing my screen, so I don't have to battle that, right? See what that one's. See what this is right here. Here is digital traps, a critical role of online encounters in the entrapment of minors and sex trafficking. Kyla Baird and Jennifer Connolly. We are grateful to the editors of TBA for our opportunity to respond to the commentary on our systematic review of the sex trafficking of minors, specifically regarding the initial recruitment location. Upon revisiting the 7 out of 23 reviewed studies that address recruitment locations, we find that the discrepancy with the commentators' views stands for differing interpretations of the term initial. We affirm that these 7 studies, which include the Internet as a prominent initial recruitment site, are valid and appropriate for inclusion. We also emphasize that, irrespective of recruitment location, we and the commentators share deep concerns about the severe impact of sex trafficking on minors, recognizing it as a heinous crime against vulnerable populations. Traffickers have both online and in person methods, they use both, to manipulate and exploit youth. Our review highlights the Internet as a primary platform for traffickers to form relationships with minors comparable in danger to in person interactions. The 23 reviewed papers focus on documenting these predatory relationships and the critical role of supportive, healing relationships and preventive and intervention. Also, one of the one of the videos I got has actually got well known school programs. And in those programs where your children are in these classrooms, right, they're able to go, anybody can download the app and portray themselves as being in the school. That's been done innumerable times, and saying and writing to your child and say, "Hey, guess what? I'm in your 5th grade class, the math class. Do you remember me?" But guess what? They don't remember them, but let's say, "Okay, you're friends with such my other friend too." Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and accept this and be talking to this person. Well, then the little kid gets coaxed to go outside and talk to the person, and it's a grown man who ends up kidnapping the little girl right off of the school grounds. Okay, so they need to make some of these apps and sites for children that are in school to make it where it's safe for our kids. These adults, these predators, do not need to be able to access our children when they're sitting there in school doing their best to go to school. And yet, our children are being violated through these apps too. I don't know if y'all knew and heard about this or not, but that's one of the things that's going on as well. We wish to extend our thanks to the editors of TBA for their invitation to respond to the commentary on the conclusions we draw in our systematic review of sex trafficking of minors regarding the initial location of recruitment. We carefully considered their comments and have examined the studies in our systematic review that address this point. It got 7 out of 23 papers. We conclude that the discrepancy between our review and those of the commentators lies in the different ways that the word initial is being used, as we had seen that earlier, right? So let's see if there's anything else we need to basically read here to go to the next thing, right? They're saying that, moreover, we continue to support the conclusions of the review papers that the Internet is a primary location for predatory action in the initial phase of recruitment, and that relationships of traffickers form with youth online are as dangerous as those they might form through in person interactions. We outline in more detail our responses to these issues below. Prior to doing so, we would like to thank the commentators for describing our systematic review as excellent. We appreciate your endorsement of our work. Second, we would like to highlight that apart from the question of recruitment location, we and the commentators are perfectly aligned to our deep and in our deep concerns for the consequences of sex trafficking of our children and youth. Well, a lot of times I get so tired of them saying that they are so for our youth, but they're just getting slaps on the wrist. Who noticed that? If you're tired of these perpetrators just getting slap on the wrist, please put one in there. Like the commentators, we are highly invested in prevention and intervention to reduce the risk of trafficking and in providing healing and recovery to youth who have been trafficked. Finally, we acknowledge that the available research on the sex trafficking of minors consistently highlights how deeply trafficking is rooted in deceptive relationships. Traffickers pose as supporters of or benefactors, using manipulation to recruit, entrap, and ultimately enmesh them in exploitation. I got a friend, John Michael Landers, and maybe sometime I can have him on the show. And he was diving, and a guy came in there and told his mom that he could get him better with diving and stuff. And she agreed to the terms, and he ended up getting trafficked. It goes on so much, y'all. I promise you. So let's go in here. This is more of a study, right? The chart reviews and stuff. I see something very important over there on the other side of the screen. So I'm going to go there. Warning youth about the dangers of meeting strangers in person is a limited value, and youth need to be aware of the many hazardous environments in which hazardous relationships can be formed. We also did some videos in here that shows apps that you could use to safeguard. There's some certain apps that if your kid takes a picture of like a hurt place on them, like a scratch or anything, you could have that picture go automatically to your phone, so you will be alerted when your child is hurt. Okay, you'll be alerted anytime somebody sends a sexual message to your child, these certain words, okay? So I really believe that parents and grandparents, we need to invest in this kind of stuff for our children. They are worth it, okay? Let's go to the next thing here. Okay, making sure that no one said anything. I'm glad you are here. Got a one there. Hey there, Chris. Good to see you. Thanks for coming in. So let's go to the next frame on this. And they said, "What is human trafficking?" Have you ever noticed the top of this? Okay, this is why I wanted to share y'all. This is the Asian Association of Utah. Okay, and I really like a lot of the information that they have. And it says, "What is human trafficking?" Human trafficking is a crime involving the exploitation of someone for the purposes. Man, I try to highlight it, it messes up. I'm sorry. For the purposes of compelled labor or commercial sex act, the use of force, fraud, or coercion, where a person younger than 18 is induced to perform a commercial sex act. It is a crime regardless of whether there is any force, fraud, or coercion. Examples of force, fraud, and coercion: force beating with or without objects, burning, sexual assault and rape, confinement, torture practices, fraud, false promises, withholding wages, lied about promises of a better life, blackmail, extortion, coercion, threats of serious harm against any person, including schemes intended to threaten and direct harm, controlling daily life skills, creating dependency. Common terms that are often associated with or interchanged with human trafficking include trafficking in persons, labor trafficking, sex trafficking, child sex trafficking, modern day slavery, contemporary slavery, and forced labor. Understanding the definition of human trafficking using the action means purpose model here. The AMP model is often used to help explain the federal definition of human trafficking. Okay, action recruits, harbors, transports, provides, patronizes, solicits, and advertises, plus the means, which is force, fraud, or coercion, plus the purpose, commercial sex act, labor, or services, equals human trafficking. And a lot of people say, well, you wasn't trafficked if they sold you at the house where, like the kitchen table. No, that's not true because sex trafficking is also that's the sale of money. Okay, for money you got monetary gain for what you did with a child. Okay, human trafficking occurs when a perpetrator, often referred to as a trafficker, takes any one of the enumerated actions and then employs a means of force, fraud, or coercion for the purpose of compelling the victim to provide commercial sex acts or labor or services. At a minimum, one element from each column must be present to establish a potential situation of human trafficking. The presence of force, fraud, or coercion indicates that the victim has not consented of his or her own free will. Remember that under federal law, any minor under the age of 18 years induced into commercial sex is considered to be a victim of sex trafficking, regardless of any indicators of force, fraud, or coercion. And I got some friends, and I'm not going to list their names in here, um, who they were violated. Some men actually come to the window, and they were young teens, 13, 14-year old. And still today, since she got two adult children and one minor, her family still says, "But your fault." But let me tell you, it is not her fault. It is the parents, it's every adult around's responsibility to take care of the child, okay? And when you go and you take somebody out of a window and take them to the candy store, take them to do different things, no, that is y'all. And that, please stop telling her that she willingly had sex with these grown men and she was a kid herself, okay? Why not protecting the child? Why are you still wanting these bad men to be around your children and your grandchildren, right? What are the types of trafficking? Sex trafficking is a form of modern day slavery in which individuals perform commercial sex through the use of force, fraud, or coercion. Victims of sex trafficking are manipulated or forced to engage in sex acts for someone else's commercial gain, as I just said, right? The National Human Trafficking Hotline provided the following statistics on sex trafficking for 2019. Note that stats are based solely on the information received. This is not a comprehensive report. So that's older. That goes all the way, that went from 2015 to 2019. But so this goes to show the numbers back then. There's a top states by sex trafficking, but that's 2019. We need some updates, people, right? Please update this. See the number one, it says California, then Texas, Florida, Ohio, then New York. It says the gender age 7,171, male 527. But we're not going to get into those numbers like that. Like I said, that was 2019, okay? So let's see if we can. Tell me.
I am a labor trafficking survivor. I came as a religious visa. So I was there for the leader. I was told to take care of their grandchildren. I was with them 24 hours. So I was sleeping in the same room with the children. I got out from this situation 2003. And then I was scared to be undocumented. When I came to Tamayan, they treated you as a warm family.
Damayan is an organization of Filipino migrant workers. The people that we serve work as nannies, elderly caregivers, house cleaners, personal assistants, and other work in private households. Ito ho, mga karapatan ho ng mga domestic workers in New York. We're really looking to reach workers who maybe have experienced trafficking or who are in the best position to meet trafficked workers. Labor trafficking is when one person holds or obtains another person in coerced or forced labor. It's the individual employer or trafficker who's forcing, coercing, manipulating a worker. So the indicators that we see are usually of threats, passport and other identification theft. It's usually restricted movement, restricted communication.
For a case of trafficking, what we're usually going to be looking for are signs that the workers don't have a freedom to move about. They aren't getting paid for the work that they're performing. Maybe they don't have identifying documents. They're being made to live in substandard living conditions. They may be skilled or unskilled laborers, young or old, male or female.
I never heard them complain. It didn't cross my mind that they were being abused.
When you'd ask the boys, how's it going? Then none of them ever said, well, this happened to me or this happened to me or whatever.
We had a case and it involved the parent exploitation of American workers, and they were adults with intellectual disabilities. They were transported from Texas to a turkey processing plant in Iowa. For approximately 35 years, these adults were working for a company for at least 40 hours per week, but only being paid $65 a month.
Wow, 65
They
a
were
month?
hidden away from much of the world. These men were punished in cruel ways. And so after 35 or 40 years of blood, sweat, and tears, when these men were finally rescued, they had nothing to show for it.
So sorry, guys.
What we find in a case like that, even involving people with intellectual disabilities, is that the things that make them vulnerable are the very same things that you might see in a case involving foreign workers.
The same type of force and coercion that a shackle would be is the same kind of mental anguish they're going through with some of the things that a trafficker might threaten them with.
In order to build any kind of relationship, you have to go out to them. I'm talking about everything from working with the social service providers, the clinics, the churches, anywhere where labor trafficking victims may go for strength or for help. That's where law enforcement should be reaching out and proving that we're serious about helping.
The Illinois Migrant Legal Assistance Project provides free legal services to migrant and seasonal farm workers. When we do specific outreach, we go to labor camps. Many times they have basic questions like, where is there a church that might have a service in Spanish? And those open up lines of communication where they come to trust us and talk with us. Usually by the second or third time, you'll get a sense of, are there some deeper issues here that are going on?
I think it all starts by being a good listener and letting them know that you are going to try to do whatever you can to help.
I met my trafficker back in my country, Dominican Republic. They offer us job in the United States, working in hotels. When we came here, what happened is there was not such a job like that. They got a job in DVD manufacturing company. We already invest a lot of money to come, so we had to accept the job, and we did. But he treated us like we were no one. We were living in a one-bedroom apartment, and it was 3 people living there. My paycheck every week was like $39. When we were in that situation, people could see us. We were hardworking in that company. Nobody noticed anything.
Huntsville, Alabama.
And
Yes.
then we met Catholic charity person, and we explained her our situation. So she contacted one agent from ICE.
Ronnie
Yeah,
had
to
so many
Mississippi.
concerns. That was the biggest trust barrier to get over, to let him know that I am genuinely concerned for you and your friends and coworkers and for your families.
They made all possible to bring my wife and my 2 kids. I got a job thanks to the people that were out there to help me, but they changed our lives. I mean, they saved us. And I can tell you now, because I'm a survivor of human trafficking, yeah.
Yes, you are. Faces of human trafficking. Wow. Now let's go over here. What is y'all's take on that? Everybody, can y'all give me your idea of what y'all seen in the video? It makes you sick, don't it? Let's get to now. This is advocates. Thank you so much, Bucket List. And this is advocates.org, human trafficking. There's so many different help organization out there. This was in Colorado, the human trafficking hotline run by the Laboratory to Combat Human Trafficking. Remember the number at 1-888-373-7888. Again, 1-888-373-7888. Or text 233-733. We saw what human trafficking is. We don't need to go back over there. Who is vulnerable? It's very important to go over this information as well. Human trafficking can happen to anyone, but people are often targeted because of their vulnerabilities. And we know that certain people are more vulnerable than others. Significant risk factors include recent migration or relocation, substance use, mental health concerns, homelessness, past experiences of abuse or neglect, being LGBTQ in addition to others. Often traffickers identify and leverage a victim's vulnerabilities in order to create dependency. How do traffickers control victims? Traffickers employ a variety of control tactics. The most common include physical and emotional abuse and threats, isolation from friends and family, and economic abuse. They make promises aimed at addressing the needs of their target in order to impose control. As a result, victims become trapped in fear leaving for a myriad of reasons, including psychological trauma, shame, emotional attachment, or threats to themselves or their families. Who are the traffickers? Perpetrators of human trafficking span all racial, ethnic, and gender demographics and are as diverse as survivors. They include individuals, business owners, members of a gang or network, parents or family members of victims, intimate partners, owners of farms or restaurants, and powerful corporate executives and government representatives. One thing they all have in common is that they are usually someone that the victim knows and trusts. Like I said, it was my family member, and it was taken over at one time to restaurants in Orlando. Then at times, in the home where different people were there, and then again to other places where the child pornography was, in my case, and and then later on it reared its head even uglier to a farm, and y'all hear Charles Rogers talk about that farm quite a bit. Victims and survivors of human trafficking also span all racial, ethnic, and gender identities. The folks with certain vulnerabilities can be more susceptible to you being targeted. Y'all, okay, y'all always squabble about Epstein list, but there are a lot more people who are not on the Epstein list who Charles Rogers has called out because he actually saw these people and they actually tried to murder him at times. And he's witnessed seeing these heinous crimes that these guys do, okay? So it's judges, lawyers, attorneys, congressmen, owners of people that started the Home Depot in, I guess, in North Carolina and Georgia, the gridiron. It's huge, okay? Myth trackers target victims they don't know. Reality. So that's a myth, right? So the reality is many survivors have been trafficked by romantic partners, including spouses, and by family members, including parents. Myth. Only women and girls can be victims and survivors of sex trafficking. Reality. Men and boys are also victimized by sex traffickers. LGBTQ boys and young men are seen as particularly vulnerable to trafficking. Did y'all notice something about that other thing when they trafficked the guys that were mental, had their learning disorders? The thing is, men are taught to, you're not supposed to cry. So when you go like this and you cry and you try to stand up, you're made to make like you're less than a man if you go tell, right? Nothing's further from the truth. It's okay to cry, it's okay to tell. Myth, only undocumented foreign nationals get trafficked into the United States. Reality, Polaris has worked on thousands of cases of trafficking involving foreign national survivors who are legally living and or working in the United States. These include survivors of both sex and labor trafficking. Well, I noticed in Minnesota not too long ago where they had rescued like 20 something thousand children, and another day 40 something thousand, and some were even adults. But they even found some still in cages. Um, but they seemed to log where some of them already were shipped. And thank God what had happened, how these people ended up getting in trouble was one boy escaped, okay? Something shifted and it ended up throwing him. And so he was able to. Somebody's knocking on the door. I don't know who that is. Who is it? I'm not going to answer it, not knowing. Okay, myth human trafficking is always or usually a violent crime. Reality, the most pervasive myth about human trafficking is that it often involves kidnapping or physically forcing someone into a situation. In reality, most traffickers use psychological means such as tricking, defrauding, manipulating, or threatening victims into providing commercial sex or exploitative labor. Myth. People being trafficked are physically unable to leave their situations, locked in, held against their will. Reality, that is sometimes the case. More often, however, people in trafficking situations stay for reasons that are more complicated. Some lack the basic necessities to physically get out, such as transportation or safe place to live. Some are afraid for their safety. Some have been so effectively manipulated that they do not identify at that point as being under the control of another person. Like my siblings had ended up telling the police officer that I had been shot at and all these other things, and I ended up coming back to out of the fugue state because the car had backfired going by the school, and I ran out like a bat of hell, and they had to find me. And then when I ended up coming out of that stupor, the state trooper, the police officer, the sheriff was actually driving up the driveway, and I guess he had done called my dad in advance, and my dad was up at the house, and my daddy said, "No, all them bruises all over her, all these marks and everything, they're lying about me putting them on her. She fell in the blackberry bushes. Look at these deep gashes. No, I didn't do them. I didn't shoot. That ain't baby marks. That's from where she fell in the blackberries. Get deep gashes and stuff." So I remember the sheriff looking at me and said, "You better never talk about your daddy or anybody doing this ever again, or we're going to do something to you." So when you got people so you already are threatened that if you go tell on this, so why would I go tell now from then on? There was no room open where I could tell for safety, right? Myth, all commercial sex is human trafficking. Reality, all commercial sex involving a minor is legally considered human trafficking. Commercial sex involving an adult is human trafficking if the person providing commercial sex is doing so against his or her will as a result of force, fraud, or coercion. Myth, if the trafficked person consented to be in their initial situation, then it cannot be human trafficking or against their will because they knew better. Okay, that's a myth. Here comes the reality. Initial consent to commercial sex or a labor setting prior to acts of force, fraud, or coercion, or the victim is a minor in a sex trafficking situation. It's not relevant to the crime nor its payment. It's another myth. People in active trafficking situation always want help getting out. Reality. Every trafficking situation is unique, and self-identification as a trafficking victim or survivor happens along a continuum. Fear, isolation, guilt, shame, misplaced loyalty, and expert manipulation are among the many factors that may keep a person from seeking help or identifying as a victim, even if they are in fact being actively trafficked. And then there's video right here. And let's go to this, okay?
Please close your eyes. I'd like for you to think about the images that pop into your mind when I first say the words human trafficking. Don't overthink it. I just want you to remember those first images. Okay, you can open them now. If the images that you flashed on were those of pretty young girls locked in a basement, maybe chained to a bed, dark figures holding them hostage, or vans transporting them from place to place, you'll be in the majority. Those are the images and the stories that we're inundated with, stoked by Hollywood, social media, and Law and Order SVU. But I can pretty much guarantee that no one flashed on an adult male construction worker or an adult female cleaning a hotel room with the Rocky Mountains shining boldly in the background. On any given day in 2023, there are 24 million people being trafficked for sex or labor worldwide. 6 million of them, roughly the population of the state of Colorado, are being trafficked for sex. And about 18 million, 3 times that amount, are being trafficked for labor. Yet we rarely hear about it, and maybe more concerning, we almost never recognize it, even when it's happening right in front of us. I was 26 and just out of graduate school when I first heard about human trafficking. I was working on the outskirts of a conflict zone in northern Uganda with child soldiers, talking to the families, hearing about the pain and the fear and the hunger and the violence. It was overwhelming. Learning about children being exploited hurts. I wanted to be part of the solution, but I wasn't sure how to create real, lasting, and sustainable change. Since moving back to the US, I've dedicated my professional career to working with marginalized and vulnerable communities on labor exploitation and sexual exploitation. Perhaps like many of you, I used to think of human trafficking as a faraway issue, one perpetrated by criminal syndicates moving people across borders, or scary dudes in a white van kidnapping people from Target parking lots. What I've learned over the last 10 years is that the social and systemic inequalities that underpin human trafficking are just as prevalent in the United States as anywhere else, and that trafficking happens everywhere, including in high-income ski resort communities like ours, where inequality and demand are high, and awareness of the issue remains persistently low. The complexities and the enormity of this issue make it a hard thing for us to wrap our brains around. People get hung up on the idea that it's too big, too scary, too far away, or maybe just not our problem. So the legal definition of human trafficking is a severe form of exploitation for labor, including sex as a form of labor, through force, fraud, or coercion. So a human is forcing another human being to work against their will through physical or violent force, fraudulent promises, or coercive tactics for their own profit. Profit is the key word. Trafficking is an economic crime. It's hard for us to think of it that way because it's also so violent, but at its core, trafficking is about profit. We often think that if we arrest the perpetrators and rescue the victims, that will solve the issue. But that logic is flawed. While law enforcement certainly has a role to play, we cannot arrest away an issue so inherently tied to what and who we value or don't value, what and who we find worthy of our time and our resources, and how we spend our own hard-earned money. Trafficking is not a criminal justice issue, it is a human rights issue. And no matter where in the world you live, it is at your doorstep. I'm going to tell you some stories now, some true stories of severe exploitation for labor or sex that occurred here in Colorado, told to us through the Human Trafficking Hotline. They're hard to hear, they're also hard to tell. Earlier this year, a group of Nicaraguan men were smuggled across the border by a man that they paid to guide them. Once they arrived in the US, their smuggler began to extort them for more money, telling them that if they didn't pay, their families would be killed. When they couldn't pay because they didn't have any money, they were brought to Colorado where their debt was sold to a local construction business owner. While working construction for this man, paying off an extorted debt, the men were forced by threats of deportation, physical violence to themselves and to their families to build condos at a local ski resort without pay and under torturous conditions. They were working 18 to 20-hour days, very little food or water, and they were forced to sleep outside in January with temperatures dipping well below zero. No safety equipment, no training. They were too scared to talk to law enforcement, but when they were able to find an advocate to support them, they were quickly moved by their trafficker to the next site. Same conditions, no advocate. They are still in conditions of debt bondage. This is human trafficking. A few years ago, a 13-year-old girl named Kaya met a 35-year-old man online. She was a pretty typical kid. She was from a Midwest city. She lived with her single mother, who she often fought with. Mom worked 2 jobs to make ends meet, so she wasn't at home very much. After a few weeks of messaging with this man, she agreed to meet him at a local fast food restaurant. She was quickly charmed. He was good looking, showered her with compliments and with gifts, things that her mother couldn't possibly afford. She thought she was in love. After a few weeks, he asked her to run away with him. They would drive his car to California where they would get married and start a new life. She was in. A couple of days before they were supposed to leave, he asked if she had any friends that she might want to take along. He had a friend who needed a girlfriend. She was able to convince another 13-year-old girl to run away with them. That girl was already jealous of Kaya and her new boyfriend. It didn't take much convincing, and they were gone. After a couple days and a few hundred miles, the men pulled off the highway at a hotel. They told the girls that they were out of money and that they were a family now, and everyone was going to have to contribute. And they reminded the girls of how much they'd already done for them. Within a couple days, they built online profiles for the girls and began selling them for sex. They were stopping on the highway, hotels, motels, Airbnbs, sometimes just for a night, sometimes for multiple nights, depending on the demand. They arrived in Keystone, Colorado at the peak of ski season. Tens of thousands of wealthy tourists to feed the demand. The demand was high.
And remember, stopping at hotels was not to say like we stop at hotels and we get a rest. These kids do not get a rest, okay?
These 2 13-year-old girls were trapped inside this Airbnb for 3 weeks, kept high in order to stay compliant. This is human trafficking. In Colorado's wealthiest county, in a beautiful home, there was a dark secret. There lived a wealthy foreign national family. They owned multiple homes around the world. It was mom, dad, and their 2 school-age kids. They kept a nanny close by at all times. She was a distant cousin of the family, from the same country, but she didn't speak English. To outsiders, everything seemed in order. She would sometimes accompany the family to the grocery store or on other errands. People would occasionally see her playing with the kids in the yard. What they didn't know was that she was suffering. She'd been recruited to come to this job by a local labor recruiter in her hometown. Her family had encouraged her to take the job. She was young, and she'd been promised an opportunity to attend community college. This was her chance. When she arrived, her passport was confiscated for safekeeping. She was forced to sleep on blankets in the basement, no furniture. She was told she couldn't leave the house without permission, and she was beaten when she tried. And the father would regularly visit the basement to sexually assault her. She was working 15 to 18-hour days, caring for the children, the home, cooking. It took her 9 years to finally summon the courage to leave. 9 years. This is human trafficking. Okay, so this is heavy, right? Let's all take a deep breath together. Do this with me, okay? Ready? I get it. By now, things are probably coming up for you. They are for me too. These stories are overwhelming and devastating, and you're probably wondering how you fit into this complex puzzle. There are ways both big and small that we as community can support survivors. And I'm gonna give you some tools now so that we can do better, because I do believe that we can do better. Once we're armed with the truth about how this shows up and who is most affected, and maybe most importantly, how we can work together as community to both prevent this from happening in our own backyard and also to support survivors to come forward and report it when it does. First, push back on false and often harmful narratives. Know the truth and bring people into this fight with the truth. We don't need sensationalized imagery. The truth is enough. Speak up on social media, or maybe even around your own dinner table, against invented narratives of innocent young female victims or scary male perpetrators that are kidnapping people. According to FBI data, less than 1% of trafficking involves kidnapping. Traffickers overwhelmingly know their victims. They are family members, like the case of the domestic servant, or intimate partners, like Kaya's boyfriend, or employers, like on the construction site, or other people in positions of power. On average, 25% of perpetrators are female.
Wow.
Trafficking is hidden in plain sight. Second, stop othering and don't look away. Trafficking is not something that happens over there or only to certain types of people, and the perpetrators are usually not who we think they are. Who and what we value and who we consider worthy of our time and our resources can have a huge effect on trafficking locally. By putting this into a more local context instead of a faraway issue, we can start to see how the vulnerable people in our own communities might be being exploited, and we'll better understand how to support them. I'll ask you to now think about the vulnerable people in your own community. Those who don't feel connected to resources or who don't know how to find them. Trafficking victims don't stay in these situations because they're locked in a basement. They stay because they don't know who or how to ask for help, don't think that they'll be believed, or simply have nowhere else to go. Third, we all want stuff and we want it cheap. The allure of cheap labor and goods is the driving force behind our consumer choices. Yet so often in our quest for affordability and convenience, we don't recognize the consequences of our buying habits. In industries like agriculture, hospitality, construction, domestic servitude, cost-cutting measures have taken priority over basic human rights. Employers capitalize on a workforce lacking legal protections and often composed of migrants just seeking a chance at survival. Workers suffer deplorable conditions, substandard wages, and limited rights. I urge you to become more conscious consumers. Think deeply about where your food and manufactured goods come from. Fourth, call the human trafficking hotline. Report suspicious behavior or find resources for a friend, a family member, or a community member in need. If you see something, say something. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground. I hope I've given you some clarity on what trafficking looks like in our communities, and I really hope that you're thinking about the vulnerable people in your own community. Hold on to that. Turn towards this issue instead of away from it. Affecting change locally will have ripple effects globally. I could add more here, but I'm gonna let the great poet and author Maya Angelou have the last words. She said, "I did then what I knew how to do. Now that I know better, I do better." Thank you.
Wow. Let's go to this next thing that our bucket list just shared with me. I think it's very important. So bear with me while I get this up, please. Anyone who hasn't put the thumbs up, please put the thumbs up. Appreciate it. Hey, Carlene, good to see you. Thank you. They get our bucket list for sharing this information, what I'm about to share with you. There, what? This is called IamAtreasure.com. That should be easy enough to remember this, right? IamAtreasure.com. Survivor-led trauma-informed care, empowering women in the sex industry and survivors of trafficking to live healthy, flourishing lives, equipping communities to bring that hope to life. Real hope, real change, real impact. Since 2003, Treasures has been a survivor-led, trauma-informed organization restoring hope to women in the sex industry, the survivors of trafficking, and equipping communities to join the fight. See how freedom begins. Watch our story. So let's watch their story, okay? Did y'all notice that? I want to see if y'all notice that. Okay, go here. Okay, right here. I think I can go back a minute and try to find that picture. Look at there. Did y'all notice her face right there? The tear. It looks like a tear. Oh, that her hair right there. Thank you, Harmony. I want to remind everybody because that new thing that's out also, if you see a note on the windshield, don't lift it up because nowadays they got drugs coated on it, okay? So maybe this was good when it started, but today that's kind of dangerous, right? You can't see it? Okay, you see. Hold on a minute. Let me go back. Stop sharing. Hold on a minute. Let me go back. Okay, let me try to see if I can start that over again. So y'all can see the video. I'm sorry you couldn't see it. It says also show, so it should be showing. Is it showing now? No sound now? I'm not sure what's going on if the sound ain't going on. Huh. Sound is right there. So let me try to um, let me try to redo that. Let's retry that again, right? No sound. I know that, and it's got it where it's supposed to be. They changed the sound thing, okay? They changed how this layup is. Let me turn up my thing over here so I can make sure that it plays up here. Hold on. Let me turn up my thing over here so I can make
I grew up in a very violent neighborhood. I was 5 years old when I was first sexually abused.
I grew up in a
At
very
13, my mother left. She just disappeared. I was a kid, suddenly responsible for my little brother. No food, no safety. I started stealing just so we could eat. Then I met an older boy who promised to take care of us. I thought I could trust him. But trust can be dangerous when you're vulnerable. At 19, I was in a life I never chose, trapped in the world of sexual exploitation. My boyfriend became my pimp. I gave him all my money, all my power. I felt trapped. Then, one person changed everything. One woman who saw me, who didn't judge, who simply cared. She believed in me before I could believe in myself. And that belief gave me the courage to leave. Recovery wasn't easy, but it was worth it. My life has been completely transformed, and I knew that I wasn't the only one who needed support. Right now, 89% of women in the sex industry want out, but they don't see a way. That's why Treasures was born. Treasures started with just handwritten notes left on car windshields, small messages letting women know someone cared. Today, we're a survivor-led movement, helping survivors of exploitation and trafficking escape, heal, and rebuild their lives. Through support groups, mentoring, and outreach, we've served over 7,260 women, launching programs in 139 cities across 6 continents. But the work isn't done, and the only way out is through. We believe every survivor deserves a chance to write a new story, because the past doesn't define you. Hope does. And with your help, we can make hope a reality, because the past is not your future. My name is Harmony Dust, and I am a survivor.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that bucket list. Wow. Thank you so much, Harmony Dust. thoughts and prayers and lots of appreciation to you for getting this out there, for being a true survivor, for starting this organization, giving a lot of people hope that they can get better. I really appreciate, love each one of y'all. Please pass this on. I'm sorry that String Guard was giving me a little bit of a fit. First didn't want to see the picture, then didn't want to do the sound. But we got it going, but I appreciate Bucket for letting me know that when it had a problem. Yeah, be sure y'all speak up. That maybe help me where I'm able to go back and try to get it fixed. Y'all might be somebody's only way out. And y'all also remember, okay, if there is a sign or ticket on up underneath the wiper blade or something, you are not to touch it nowadays because now it's being laced. Something that's innocent like and good, like this lady is doing. Man, now it's bad because now they put drugs on this kind of stuff. So y'all be hyper vigilant. Thank you so much, everyone. God bless y'all.